shut off the fight or flight response. As soon as you realize, I don't need it. I don't need to play dead. I don't need to climb a tree. I don't need to run away from a bear. That was just an unexpected email. That's just a deadline. That's just a tax bill I wasn't expecting. Your heart's pounding. Your body's doing all the things that it needs you to do so you can run away from danger, but there is an actual danger. And East and West have been slowly coming together because the meridian system that Chinese medicine has so long talked about, we now have a physical microtubule duct system in the body that's been found called the Primovascular system, which is being researched now, but anybody can go look it up, the PVS, that travels throughout the body. It is the diameter of the smallest a human skin cell. It's no wonder we haven't found it before.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons.
My guest today is Naomi Janzen. She's an advanced clinical EFT practitioner and trainer, the co-author of the best-selling evidence-based EFT manual. She also co-created the documentary The Science of Tapping and developed Remindfulness, a mindfulness app recognized by Positive Psychology as a top 10 app. For nearly 2 decades, Naomi has worked at the forefront of emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, training professionals around the world and helping people reduce mental overload, regulate their nervous systems, and regain clarity under pressure. In this conversation, we'll explore how EFT can quiet internal noise, support clearer perception, and of course, how it will help give us stronger intuition and better decision-making. Naomi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess we've got to start with, and I've heard of tapping a fair bit, but some of the audience won't. What is tapping and why would someone want to learn it?
First of all, I like to prepare people because when I introduce tapping, if you haven't had any experience with acupuncture, for example, it can seem really strange at first. So I find that the easiest way to build a bridge to what's already familiar to people, so maybe it feels a little bit less weird when I sort of demonstrate it and show you more details what it is. It's anytime you have gone like this, oh my goodness, or gone, should I take the Friday off or take the Monday off? Or just gone like this, oh my goodness, I've got such a headache. Or how can I get everything done in such a short period of time? Everything I just did was accessing certain points on the body that are in traditional Chinese medicine for over 3,000 years associated with calming the nervous system. But longer than that, as long as human beings have been around, we have these places on our skin that regulate our nervous system. And we don't go like this, where have I put my car keys, do we? Because we don't have anything going on here that's going to calm our nervous system. So we intuitively reach for these points that are associated with regulation and calming, sending calming signals to our brains that basically send an electrochemical signal that says, it's okay, I'm safe, everything's okay, there are no wild animals chasing me right now. You can also think of it as like the shutoff switch, like we all have for our cars. If the car alarm goes off and there's no danger and, a jogger ran by to, nudged it when they walked by or something like that, you just point your little fob at the car alarm and you go boop like that and the car alarm shuts off. So human beings have this kind of like the alarm system in our body. And when it goes off, it's known as fight or flight. We all kind of hear about it, fight or flight. How do we switch it off? And a lot of us in daily life, this system was not designed to be triggered constantly all day long. It was designed to be triggered like once every 2 weeks. And, approximately, but, our lives, when we're running old hardware here, our bodies really haven't changed a lot, in 100,000 years. And so the systems that were designed for the kind of life that we used to live are not so much adaptive for modern life when our internal car alarm's going off constantly. But we instinctively know to reach for these points, stimulate them either by going, oh my goodness, or like I said, tapping on these points like this, even chewing your fingernails, because we have these points on our fingers. Why do we chew? Isn't that random? Like, why would we chew our fingernails? Well, because there are these regulation points that are beside our fingernails that get stimulated. So that's why gnawing on your fingernails calms you down. You get stressed and chew your fingernails, people that do that.
There you go. People are always telling me not to chew my fingernails, and now I know why. Actually, my brother-in-law, many, many years ago when he went through university, he had half the length of fingernail as everyone else you knew, because he was constantly, with all the study and uni, chewing them down. Yeah, and I've listened to you on quite a few podcasts so far, and I have not heard you say that one. That's really interesting. So there's sensitive points on the fingernails that will give us some slight release of whatever we're a little bit anxious about.
It is. I mean, you're not chewing your fingernails because you're hungry. You head to the pantry for that. You chew your fingernails because you're nervous, or you're feeling stressed, or you're thinking and you're trying to sort out your thinking. We intuitively know that if we stimulate these points, and tapping is not some brand new invention. What it is it's a rediscovery and sort of a formalization of this, working with the architecture of our bodies and our nervous systems. And it's kind of like if we could find the original operating manual of the human being, it would be in there. Tapping would be in there, and so we don't have that manual anymore. We're trying to find, we're trying meditation, lots of other really effective and powerful techniques to try to live with nervous system activation. But tapping is a really direct and effective and powerful way that people can activate that themselves. Shut off the fight or flight response as soon as you realize, I don't need it. I don't need to play dead. I don't need to climb a tree. I don't need to run away from a bear. That was just an unexpected email. That's just a deadline. That's just a tax bill I wasn't expecting. Your heart's pounding. Your body's doing all the things that it needs you to do so you can run away from danger. But there is an actual danger. It's a perceived danger. And then when we have nervous system activation, it gets in the way of us being able to actually deal with whatever that, tech or admin or social emergency is that's triggered it. And so tapping is a direct way to stimulate these points intentionally in a focused way that anyone can do to calm your nervous system when you need to.
Okay, so some of these points on the body that you've just gone to, and for those who aren't watching on YouTube, I apologize, you can't see where Naomi's putting her hands. The classic first one you did, my wife always does when we drive on the freeway, and when I change lanes. The hand goes straight to the sternum there, or just, the base of the neck. And it just stays there until I'm 100% in the next lane and my blinker goes off. Then the hand comes down. So, I just, I thought she was holding her breath a little bit there, but potentially she was. But yeah, at this point, very interesting. So,
that term, clutching your pearls?
True.
The term, so-and-so's clutching their pearls, which that paints a picture straight away of, you're up at your throat, sort of just, it's not that actually holding on to a necklace is going to help you. It's that you are putting acupressure on those very powerful points that are right there at, right underneath the ends of your collarbone. And for the listeners that are not watching this with a visual, I'll call out the points and be sure to kind of talk about where they are so you can picture them.
Yeah. So you said some obvious ones that we do now, but then when you do tap, you're using these meridian points that the Chinese doctors, medicine have been aware of for thousands of years. Now, I've heard you talk about a little measuring device that you have so that people can measure. Like, how readily available are they and how expensive are they?
They are not expensive at all, and you can just get them on your online platform of choice. And they are called galvanometers is one word for them. But in fact, I've got one right here. They all kind of look different. So don't everybody be looking for one that looks exactly like this. It's a cheap little plastic thing that has a couple of little batteries inside it. And I think these ones are dead, the one I've got right now, because I was just doing a workshop and I went to do a demonstration and it was dead. But you hold this little device in such a way that it closes the electrical, like it creates a closed circuit, because we're working with the body's bioelectricity. And what you do is you move this around on the surface of your skin, and it sends a tiny, tiny little electrical signal into your skin, and it measures the amount of resistance. So how much pushback is there from your skin? And there are certain places on our body where the electrical resistance or the electrical conductivity are different. So everybody knows that water conducts electricity way better than, say, rubber. In a lightning storm, you want to be like have rubber wheels under you or something. You don't want to be like in a pool. So if you think of your body as kind of, if your body were made of rubber, there would be these places on your skin that would be like little pools of water where bioelectricity is conducted 4 times more intensely than the surrounding skin. So what this does is it helps you find those actual places, and acupuncturists use this little tool to figure out exactly where to put their needles. Because what acupuncturists do is they insert their needles in these places, and then when they twist the needles, it creates the pressure, what's called piezoelectricity, that interacts with the bodily system. And I don't know how much detail we have time to go into there, but that's kind of the overview of what it's for.
Yeah, and and I love the science of things like that. For the men listening, it's like, oh, okay, this is a bit scientific. It's got a little thing. So that little galvanometer that you've got there, does it flash a light when you hit the right spot, or beep?
It does both, actually. Here, there's sort of a little sort of progressive light bars. And so the higher the bars, the more the light. And then it also makes a beeping noise. And so it can be going like beep, 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 beep. And then when you get to one of these actual points, it signifies it by going, it makes this really loud. It's very obvious that you've actually hit a place on your skin. And what's cool about this is, like, if we were in the same room and I had batteries, I would hand it to you. I don't do it to you. So it's not like you can go, oh, well, you're kind of making that happen. You're pressing on it a certain way. It's like, no, you're doing it yourself. You're holding it yourself in such a way that you're closing that electrical circuit and you're moving it around. And that I find really, it helps to kind of really help people to understand that these tapping points are not theoretical. These are physical. They're measurable. We've known for over 100 years that the human body produces electricity. It's why we have EEGs and EKGs, for example, that measure the electrical signal in the brain and in the heart. When we say someone is brain dead, we're talking about the fact that there is no electricity going on in the brain. So bioelectricity is not some theoretical thing. It's real. We've known about it for over 100 years. And we've had tools that can pick up the bioelectrical properties of the skin for a long time. And we've known that we have these places on the skin that have different electrical conductivity. And then that's where the departure point comes. So then Chinese medicine says, well, yeah, duh, those are acupuncture points, and they're all connected by meridians, which are connected to moving qi, energy, through the body. Western medicine says, well, hang on a second. We know we've got these points because we can measure them, but we don't know about the meridians, and we don't know about qi because we don't have any way to measure qi. And East and West have been slowly coming together because the meridian system that Chinese medicine has so long talked about, we now have a physical microtubule duct system in the body that's been found called the Primovascular system, which is being researched now, but anybody can go look it up, the PVS, that travels throughout the body. It is the diameter of the smallest a human skin cell. It's no wonder we haven't found it before. So it's this tiny, tiny thread-like structures, and they track through the body with almost identical faithfulness to where Chinese medicine tells us the meridians are. And they're full of stem cells and DNA and all kinds of interesting stuff that's being looked at. But these meridians or the Primovascular system, it's kind of like the endpoint ducts are these tapping points on the skin. So we're tapping on these points. Acupuncture uses needles, puts needles in these points. But we're tapping on these points. I'm tapping on right now, for those listening who can't see the video, on the end of my eyebrow, on the hair, on the inside of my eyebrow towards my nose, on the side of my eye, right on the corner of my eye, on the bone, under my eye, right in the middle, on the bone of your cheek, under my nose, right in the middle, under my mouth, just in the crease above the chin. The collarbone point where you clutch your pearls is down here underneath your collarbone, sort of close to the center of your chest. And then under the arm is about 4 inches below your armpit. And then top of the head, which is right in the middle of the top of your head. If you were a marionette, that's where the string would come out. So that's the points.
And so there's I assume there's lots of other Chinese medicine acupuncture points as well.
Many.
Yeah, because I know for me, like just below my collarbones here, if I play around with my finger and push in hard, I can feel a bit of pain, and I can sort of really narrow in onto it. And then in between my thumb and forefinger here, if I pinch hard in there, I can create quite a bit of pain. And I only know that one because a friend many years ago told me that it's very good to find that pain point and massage it. I don't remember why, but
headaches. It's great for headaches.
Right. Okay. There you go. Yeah. So so in tapping, there's like, I don't know, 10 or 12 points or however many there are. Why have they chosen just those few? Are they the most beneficial for anxiety, et cetera, or?
They are points that are associated with, again, referencing Chinese medicine, meridians that are connected to kind of calming the nervous system. So if you think of each of the meridians that is engaged, think of it like a train line, and these tapping points are train stations. So you've got, let's say, for example, the tapping points that are at the sides of the corners of your eyes. That's the same train line, but those are just two different train stations. And so if you want to affect the whole train line, you can just tap on one of them on one side on your right eye, or you can tap on your left, or both at the same time. And it doesn't matter, because what you're doing is you're interacting, you're sending that piezoelectrical signal down the meridian, down the Primovascular line. And I like to liken it to anybody who's listening who, especially sort of older modems, when they stopped working and you had to unplug them for a few minutes to get them working again. So do you know why you had to unplug your modem?
No.
Static electricity buildup. So static means stuck, stopped. Electricity is supposed to flow. And those modems would kind of get this static buildup, and so they wouldn't work as well. So when you unplug them, it kind of clears out the system, and now you can plug it back in and the electricity is flowing. It's not static. And same way that you get a shock if you touch an elevator button and you've got electricity that's built up. It's sort of like a charge waiting to be released and conducted. So what we do when we tap is we're sending this is kind of the theory. This is the part that science hasn't been able to really show that this is really what's going on. But this is what we're thinking is going to be emerge as the mechanism of action. This is what Chinese medicine says. Western measurement tools aren't quite there yet. Will they get there? Maybe. Will it turn out to be something else? Maybe. But what it looks like is when we tap on these points, we're sending a pulse, an electrical pulse down through that meridian. And you can think of the PVS as like the internet cable of your body. And the nervous system, your nerves are like the electrical wiring of your body. And this is like the Cat5. This is the internet cable of your body. And when you tap, you're sending these pulses, which kind of travel down the system. What they do in the process of traveling, we're not 100% sure, but we know what the end result is because we've looked at the brain. We've done functional MRIs. We've looked at what happens in the blood and what's going on with our genes in terms of stress hormones like cortisol and so on. So we know the end result, and we know that we feel better when we do it, but there's more to be unpacked and discovered in actually how each of the pieces is fitting together.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I'm just looking here, I had a question in my head and then we've gone on to that one. So, and it was about the electrical charges in our body and stuff like that. So I've heard that tapping could be compared to, so I'm hoping clarity from you, could be like you tapping to like loose and stuck energy. Does it work like that, or is that a good or a bad description?
Well, It probably is a fine description, but the thing is, we're trying to kind of stay within the realm of what's scientifically plausible where we are right now. And everybody knows all science is what we can measure right now. You know, like radio waves were science long before there were transistors.
Yeah.
You know, microwaves, like all these things existed before we had the way to harness it or measure it. So I'm not going to say that it doesn't have to do with regulating energy. But when EFT was first developed, we didn't know what we now know. We didn't have the research. We didn't have the science. I mean, over 200 studies done and published in peer-reviewed journals around the world. We have a lot of really high quality too, like randomized controlled trials about EFT. And so we like to kind of avoid what we used to say, which was that I think it was the original kind of what was called the discovery statement by Gary Craig, who was the developer of EFT. He said I think it was like the cause of all negative emotion in the body is energy not flowing or stuck or trapped or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Well, we've really moved away from that because we have a much better explanation of what's going on, and it prejudices people against EFT if they're listening to that old explanation, which sounds really woo-woo. I'm not saying woo's bad, but I'm saying that it can get in the way of people getting the tapping that they need, of psychologists taking it seriously and using it, and of governments funding EFT for traumatized populations. So the more that we move over into let's just talk about the empirically validated part of EFT. We have enough now. We have a lot that legitimizes it. Let's kind of not use words like energy. You know, doesn't mean that isn't going to turn out to be what it's about, you know? But in terms of just the perception, yeah, it's more about just lowering the barriers to acceptance.
Right, just to make it more mainstream.
100%.
Yeah. So we talked there, like it's beneficial for people who want to calm and regulate their nervous system, take anxiety away. Mm-hmm. What about intuition? Have you found that it can improve that?
Absolutely. It's so good for intuition, because when you think of like what intuition is, it's tuning into the wisdom that comes from a quieter place inside you. And what gets in the way of being able to tune into that quieter place is the noise that's going on in your body, in your mind, in your nervous system. It's the nervous system activation. So if your fight or flight system is engaged, it's going to be very hard to tap into your intuition, because intuition it's like a more subtle relationship with yourself. Being able to even hear your intuition is a real challenge for some people. Trusting your intuition, even if you can hear your intuition, is another challenge. It's like, is that my intuition, or is that old programming, or, you know, things like that. And all of that gets really hard to navigate when your nervous system is in survival mode. And a lot of us in modern life walk around in survival mode all the time, because it's just constantly being affected by the influx, whether it's about the news or it's about what's going on in social media, or just how complicated our lives are and the stressors of modern life. So it can feel like, oh, intuition's it would be nice if I had that ability to hear, to tune into my intuition. And if I felt confident in trusting my intuition, and if I felt brave enough to act on my intuition. So what EFT can do is just get the noise out of the way, get all of that nervous system activation, because remembering fight or flight is about fight, defend yourself, or run away. And it can be expanded. We can say fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, all those things. But what do they have in common? Reactivity that's big, that's designed to get us out of a life-threatening situation. Intuition is so subtle. It's like, you know, that can get you out of life-threatening situations too. You know, as you would know, a lot of police talk about victims of violent crimes often had an inkling they shouldn't walk in that direction, or is someone following me? I don't think so. Oh, I'm being silly, and they ignore that. And then, something bad happens. So we do have this ability, and the calmer you are and the more in tune you are with yourself, I think the more you're able to, you're in touch with your intuition and you can act on it. So what tapping does is it calms that nervous system fight or flight reaction. It basically says when you're tapping, you're sending that signal to the part of your brain. It's the we can think of it as the reptile brain, the more sort of the oldest part of our brain, the primitive brain, the amygdala, that sort of place where our alarm center is. And we send this signal that says when we're tapping, the signal is, it's okay, I'm safe. That kind of calms it down. And then what happens is the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, the higher thinking part of your brain, blood and oxygen returns and it comes online. And now you're able to perceive more clearly because you're able to perceive the subtleties, the subtle signals around you. You're not just looking for the nearest tree to climb. You're actually tuned into sort of more of the nuance of life, which is, I think, where the intuition lives. And so the more you can kind of self-regulate and get that fight or flight system to kind of calm down, turn off that alarm system, the more you can hear the messages that are coming from your intuition. And you can do that on demand. That's the great thing about EFT. Is a lot of other things that you do. I mean, I'm a big fan of meditation and all of these other things, but it can take time to build up skill with that. With EFT, you can get the effect right away. You literally are just stimulating these acupuncture points and your nervous system is getting the message. And when that whole system kind of calms down, now you're more in tune. So it's great for making decisions. It's great for you can actually even use it to help you get into the zone for meditation as well, because it's just everything that works better when you calm your nervous system, EFT can help with.
So I'm loosely, I've never said or heard this before, so correct me, please. When we're tapping, are we artificially releasing feel-good chemicals?
Well, it's not artificial because if you're tapping, it means you're not being chased by a bear.
Right.
Fight or flight is for a reason. Like tapping's not going to help you climb the tree to get away from the bear. Like you actually do have to climb the tree and get away from the bear, and you need all the cortisol and all the adrenaline. Go for it. You've got to physically protect yourself by climbing the tree or playing dead, freezing, all those strategies that animals use. And we're animals too, and we have those same strategies. And so it's not artificial because what it is, remembering what I said earlier, that it's kind of old hardware. Well, it's actually old software because it's designed for where triggered us was actual real threats. And so it was appropriate. Our response was appropriate to the threat. Like there's a wild animal. I just heard this like growl coming from the underbrush. I got to react. I've got to run. I've got to save my life. And so it is a nice system. It's really good. The problem is that today in modern life, our life really isn't in danger. I mean, yes, of course, there's violent crime and things that happen to people, and you can still, your nervous system gets activated by something that is a physical threat. But the problem with modern life is that it's getting activated by perceived threats all the time. Perceived threats, look, getting an unexpected tax bill is not literally a threat to your bodily integrity the way a growl behind that tree of a sounding like a dinosaur, it's definitely not the same level of threat. And yet the body does the exact same thing. Adrenaline spikes, cortisol spikes. We go into, heart rate's going like this because our body is going, okay, where do I need to run to? But you can't run anywhere. You're sitting in your chair. Mm-hmm. So so that's the artificial triggering. And what EFT does is that stand down. It's okay. There's no bear. That was a tax bill I wasn't expecting, or, that's a deadline I suddenly realize I've got to deal with, etc.
So the the cortisol and that's being released that is good to help us run and climb trees and get out of danger, but is not good when we're when we open an envelope and we see a bill and we perceive that it's just as bad. It's when we tap, we're now releasing other chemicals to counteract that cortisol. Is that on track there?
Yeah. And it just like the more feel-good chemicals. In fact, there was a study that was done that showed that EFT is an epigenetic intervention. What that means is that it actually can change your genes. 72 different genes were differently expressed in a study of tapping for 1 hour. And some of those genes are things like genes for longevity and greater immunity. And, the opposite, the parasympathetic nervous system types of, chemicals associated with that, like endorphins, for example. And when you're stressed, it's cortisol and adrenaline and all those things which we need. I mean, and look, cortisol gets a bad rap, but we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning if we didn't have cortisol. All these chemicals, they're not just to make us run away from bears and everything like that. They spike to get us away from danger. That's when our fight or flight system kicks in. But all those chemicals are around all to do. They get you out of bed, you motivated to go and, hunt for your food, whether it's going to the supermarket or, going fishing, whatever it is. They motivate you to kind of do what you need to do, but they're supposed to kind of then stand down and let the parasympathetic nervous system take over when it's time to rest and digest and relax. And the problem is when the sympathetic nervous system gets stuck on the on setting, which happens to so many people. So you're trying to digest, you're trying to rest, you're trying to sleep at night, you're trying to have a good time with your partner, and your body's not cooperating because you're full of adrenaline, you're full of cortisol, because the memo has not reached your nervous system that you're not in danger, that it's actually time to kind of calm down.
Interesting. So I know you either now or in the past have worked one-on-one with people for, one session or dozens, depending on their needs. I'm curious, when you're working with people one-on-one, do you ever receive any intuitive impressions about what could be going on with them if they're anxious but they're not sure why? Does that happen?
I do, but I am trained and I train other people because I'm a trainer, that you need to park that intuitive knowing and not interject or on the session. Because the process of EFT is where you focus on whatever's wrong, whatever the truth is. Am I feeling super stressed? Am I really angry about that conversation I just had? Am I really worried about that thing I'm going to have to go and do, that speech I'm going to give, or whatever it is? And so with EFT, you focus on the truth of what's going on with you. So it's not a bunch of positive affirmations. You're not tapping and saying things like, I'm an amazing athlete and I'm going to win the game. You're not doing that kind of thing. You're focusing on the things that get in the way of the performance. Like, I'm doubting myself. I think I'm terrible at this. That other person looks like they're way better. Like, let's say in a sporting arena, that the other team is doing way better. There's no way we can come back from this. Or it could be, I'm so scared I'm going to make a fool of myself when I give that presentation at work tomorrow. Or I'm so angry about that conversation that we had 2 weeks ago and I can't stop thinking about it. And you're stimulating these points in time. So it's important for clients to be, and anybody watching, if you're doing your own tapping as well, truthful with yourself about how you feel while you're stimulating the acupressure points. So the conscious mind role that it's playing in tapping is to just keep bringing the target into focus. And the target is that thing that you want to try to regulate, and then let the tapping take care of the regulation. And what happens is we have this analogy called peeling the onion, where someone might start out angry about something. And then as you're tapping, suddenly the anger changes to sadness. Or guilt, or they go, actually, I feel guilty because I'm the one that said the thing that started the fight, that kind of thing. And so it's a process of peeling the onion and slowly kind of working through all the layers of what it is. And where intuition comes in a lot is that I feel like I just know that there's sadness underneath all that blustery anger. But if I say to that client, is there sadness underneath that anger? I have just tried to shortcut them from processing and expressing all that anger that needed to be expressed. I've prevented them from doing that because they might go, oh, yeah, well, I guess there is a bit of sadness, but they didn't really get the experience of, and really opening the valve and purging and expressing all of that anger. So it's important we keep our intuition to ourselves. At most, a skilled practitioner can ask questions that, when necessary, but it's often not because the tapping does it itself. But in terms of deciding, do I ask questions about that person's childhood, or do I ask more questions about this recent thing that happened? And that's where intuition can kind of help. But you also have to be very careful because it can powerfully come to you as a practitioner. And it's important, the way I experience it with a client who's tapping on anger, and then they suddenly go, actually, I'm feeling kind of sad right now. Inside, I have like a little celebration because I knew there was sadness in there. I could feel it. But very important that they got there themselves, and it wasn't me that kind of held their hand and took them there and robbed them of the experience of that release that they needed to have.
All right. So for those who are listening, we're working on If We Tap. It's helping with anxiety, helping regulate our nervous system, get us calmer, etc. And it can then help open up our intuition because we're calmer. We can tune into that easy. There's less distraction, less chaos there to hide that. I'm curious now, what if people have, say, addictions or cravings to things? Can it help at all with that?
Definitely. I mean, and cravings and addiction are kind of two different things, even though they have some things in common. And we'll just take cravings, for example. What I just said about focusing on sort of the truth of what the problem is, that applies for cravings as well. And when people are first introduced to tapping, they often say, wow, we're focusing on the negative so much. I thought we were really supposed to try to keep our thinking as positive as possible. Well, when we work on cravings, because we're working on the truth, and the truth is, oh, I love this chocolate. Oh, I love how creamy it is. I love the sweetness of it. I love the way that package looks. Again, you're just focusing on the truth, but the truth is positive when it comes to cravings. So you start tapping, focusing what you love about the thing that you're having cravings for. And then gradually you become aware that there are certain emotions that particular thing evokes. Let's take chocolate, for example. And then maybe chocolate makes you feel appreciated. So it's different things for different people. And you kind of go, when have I felt appreciated before in my life? Well, it turns out, it was my dad gave me chocolate when I did really well on that music exam, that time when I was 12. And I felt so proud of myself, and he was so proud of me. So what you're reaching for with that chocolate is really, I need to feel appreciated right now. And so once you've kind of tapped while acknowledging that there's been this conflation in the unconscious, kind of in your wiring, it just sort of naturally teases apart, and you have this sense of, hang on, that chocolate might taste kind of good, but it doesn't actually have that experience that I'm reaching for, which is why you keep reaching for the thing that you're craving, and why you never get enough is because it isn't in there, but you don't know it. You just think, if I have more, all I need is more. Then when that kind of dynamic is revealed and it just kind of loses its connection, the craving goes away.
So you're able to separate the chocolate from the feeling it gives, or and it's either I want to feel appreciated, or I want to remember my dad because he's not around because he gave me chocolate, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the association loses its connection.
It loses that automatic unconscious connection, which
Right.
takes away your control over the situation.
Yeah. So then you look at chocolate in a different light. You're looking at it in a more functional way, where it's like, oh, it might be handy sometimes, but maybe I only need to buy 1 bar a week, not 5, or what. Yeah, it's right.
That's exactly right. And chocolate's a good example because there's good chocolate, and there's bad chocolate. And so what happens is that you might have a person who eats really crappy chocolate because the really crappy chocolate is what's unconsciously associated with that positive time in your childhood. And then once you have collapsed the craving, you might never want to eat that crappy chocolate again. But now, oh, I really like good chocolate, but you don't have a problem with chocolate anymore. It's just chocolate. Sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. You become like a person who doesn't have a chocolate problem. But if it's something really unhealthy, there's in all likelihood, you'll never have it again for the rest of your life. You won't want it. You won't care about it. And you also become more aware that when I am in a certain stressful situation and I want to feel that appreciation that I felt or connect with my dad because he's not around anymore, just take the time to sit down and connect with your memories of your dad, for example. Give yourself what you need that way, because now you understand it's not in those, really bad candies that you've been overeating and craving for your whole life until you tapped. And then addiction is different, because what I find is that addiction is self-soothing behavior that you're trying to soothe something usually traumatic from your childhood. So craving, it's an association with a positive, and addiction tends to be an association, like an attempt to self-soothe something negative. And of course, there's a physiological relationship with addiction. And there's been lots of research about the kinds of things, lifestyle changes that can reduce our sort of the effect that addiction has and so on. And then there's just not having it anymore. And a lot of people who just kind of go that cold turkey with, let's take alcohol, for example. So someone just says, you know what, it's really bad for me. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not going to do alcohol anymore. Maybe they enter a 12-step program, whatever it is. They just say, that's it. But there's my life before and now my life after. They haven't actually dealt with the underlying, yes, they've done a good thing for their body. Yes, it's definitely going to help with their nervous system and it's going to help with their overall health, their mental health, everything, 100%. But you've still got the underlying traumas that you were trying to soothe in the first place. And I worked with a client who had come to me for a number of things. And one of them was this client was drinking like an entire 1.5 bottles of wine per night, and had been for 5 years. And they said, this is what I want to work on because I have this addiction. I think I'm an alcoholic. And so in the process of working together, what came up was a lot of childhood trauma. And we did a number of sessions, I think probably about 18 sessions over the course of maybe a couple of months. And I remember that there was a session where the client shows up at the session and goes, oh, I forgot to tell you a few days ago when I saw you last, I just realized I haven't had a glass, a bottle, anything of wine for 3 weeks. And I didn't even notice. It was the weirdest thing. And I said, yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And this client said, I don't understand it. We haven't even worked on that yet. And I said, that's all we've been working on. You know what I mean? Indirectly, we've been working on the childhood trauma. The childhood trauma that was unresolved, unprocessed, that was why you were reaching for the alcohol to soothe yourself. Once we process that trauma, we resolve those experiences, no need for the alcohol anymore. I mean, that's a really extreme example, and it can be alcohol, it can be collecting figurines, it can be being a workaholic. Anything you do that's excessive behavior that creates another problem is self-soothing. And tapping gets at what you're trying to soothe, so you don't have to do that anymore.
So that lady with the wine, we're talking about, she's got, I'm going to say the electrical charge is there and it's connecting to the wine. And I'm just dumbing it down to my levels here. So please correct me if I'm doing it right or wrong. So could we equate that electrical charge to an electromagnet? So the magnet sort of like is it's drawing that wine in daily, like that bottle and a half of wine. She's connected to it. Like it's got to happen because the electrical charge keeps the magnet. It's a wine magnet, and it's got it. So with the tapping, we're now taking that electrical charge away, and the magnet is now demagnetized and it doesn't have any energy anymore to attract the wine. And this is I just look at all things, all sorts of different ways to try and get it. And because I don't have your background in it, and I'm comparing it to other things. So now the magnet, it's not there. And the magnet's still sitting there, but it's no longer energized, so it can't attract anything. And she's taken 3 weeks to realize that, because I'm sure you were seeing, how often were you seeing her? Weekly?
Twice a week.
Twice
a week for an hour and a half each time.
So for 3 weeks, so that's 6 sessions, she's forgotten that is not, connection's not there anymore. And she's forgotten that she was coming to you to like get over this alcohol problem that she had. And she's forgotten. And so there's no charge, there's no connection, there's no, which sounds weird, but I get it.
No, and this is true. Like in the Cravings trials that Dr. Peter Stapleton did at Bond University here in Australia, this was quite common when they did the follow-up 6 months, a year later, where they called people that were in the trial. And they said, hey, it's the researchers. We're just calling from Bond University. And we're just finding out, how are you going with your craving? Because you were involved in that study. A lot of people said, oh, yeah, I was involved in that. I'd forgotten about that and needed to be reminded what they had tapped on. They didn't remember what their craving thing was. It's a weird thing. Yeah, we call it the apex effect. We have a name for it in EFT because it's a phenomenon that happens that you clear something so completely, you don't even remember you had the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, your analogy of the magnet, if I can just, I love metaphors and I love analogies. It's how I learn and it's how I teach. So I actually have a slide in one of my workshops that's similar to that, but think of generators, like little individual generators. In the unconscious, there is no linear time. So if you kind of look at it from the chin down, there is no awareness that was childhood. If it's still, say a bad thing happens to you, by bad thing, like let's say something that you can't move through. We're designed to move through stuff. Bad things happen, you dust yourself off, you move through. Okay, that was bad. But sometimes it's so bad or so overwhelming or we're too young, under-resourced, et cetera. We don't move on from it. We're kind of stuck in like this little Groundhog Day going round and round and round. So for all intents and purposes, down here, sort of from down below the chin in the body, in the unconscious, the event is still active. It's still alive. It's still, think of it like a little generator. And that little generator's chugging along, and it might be creating a belief. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not safe. I'm not enough. Who knows? Like whatever it is, you've got this little generator. You're trying up here from your chin up to live your life and be a grown up and make decisions and listen to your intuition, and live a rich life. But you've got this generator chugging in the background that's kind of working against you. Because for one thing, this little generator is telling you that you're still 9 years old or however old you were when it was created. So in the conscious mind, from the chin up, we know, well, that was in my childhood. It was terrible. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but it was like decades ago. But in your body, it's like, no, it isn't. It's right now. It's right now. It's right now. So every one of these things that's happened is this little generator in your body. So the more of these little generators you've got, the more you need to soothe yourself because they're loud and they're putting out charges that are disrupting your life. And so you need to soothe yourself. So whether you're shopping too much or spending too much time scrolling Instagram or reaching for bottles of wine, what you're trying to do is cope with the stress that's being constantly generated in your body by all these generators. So when we tap, we go to the generator and we unplug it. And now that part of your body knows, oh, that was in the past. Okay, so that's not still happening. That generator switched off. The effect of that generator, whether it's stress response or a belief, a negative belief, it's not being generated anymore, so it's not getting in the way. So we unplugged enough of her generators that she just didn't need to reach for the wine anymore because the wine was about coping with the output of those generators. Mm. Now at every level of her body, there was the awareness that was in the past, not just the cognitive level, but also at the level of the nervous system.
All right. So I've got another one for you that's personal to me, but it's not
Okay.
major. It's pretty minor, but it's been hanging around for 8 years.
Yes.
I went to learn to do paragliding about 8 years ago, which is where you have a parachute on your back and you run fast off the edge of a cliff and you go up so you're not jumping out of a plane, you're just creating, and you're using the parachute to pick up the thermal air and, you go around, you might go around for 5 minutes or for 2 hours and then come back down. It was a 9-day class. And on the third day, and I was the only student. So there was no break, and we're out doing it. And my instructor apparently was like one of the top Australian instructors, but personality wise, we were kind of different. We were sort of tolerating each other. And I did a couple of things wrong and he sort of started really yelling at me. So anyway, I'm on the third day, I'm running down this hill and I've got a two-way radio and I've got the speaker in my ear and I can't talk back to him, but he's giving me instructions. And I pulled on the wrong cord on the wrong side. He's telling me pull right and I pulled left. I veered off, gone down, and of course off on the left-hand side here now is these very, very large rocks like that would, half the size of a car sticking up out of the ground everywhere. And I'm not very far off the ground, barely at all. And my foot, and I've got serious boots on with steel caps. But anyway, my foot connects with one of those rocks and the parachute, the canopy thing, it wraps around over the top of a big tree. And he's screaming at me on the two-way radio and like very unhappy chappy, I can tell you. And he was obviously scared because I could have got really injured.
On his watch. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So there was fear, there was a lot of things. And anyway, and he's come down and yelled at me, you really need to think about whether you are suitable for this sport or not. And like, dressing me down. And I'm like, okay, like I'm the customer. Interesting. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're right. So anyway, and my toe's throbbing. But anyway, he calms down and he goes, it's nearly the end of the day. We're going to get you to do one last run. And I'd still have my boot on and I was limping. But anyway, so I tolerated it and off I go. And I do the last run perfect. And I get, 4 or 5 meters off the ground and I just did, and he's telling me where not to land, where to land. And I did it and did it perfect, put it down. So then we pack it all up and I take my boot off and I can see my left big toe. It's, going blue and black. And he looked at it and went, oh, he goes, you won't be back tomorrow. I said, not a hope in the world. Like I couldn't get a boot on. Anyway, I never went back because we just didn't get on. Now I've lost that toenail. I just looked down at it then. I've lost it in the last 8 years, probably 3 or 4 times. And it just constantly grows back weird and funny. And I don't know whether there's some electrical connection there in the whole event or I've just physically injured it in a way that it won't ever heal. I've been to a podiatrist and he just looked at it for 5 minutes and went, it's mechanical damage that will never repair and it's always going to be like that. Like, suck it up. I'm like, okay, beauty, thanks. And here's $150 for that 5 minutes of wonderful advice. So yeah, I'm just curious, when people have physical things wrong with them, can they tap and can it help?
Yes, it can help. I mean, I've had experiences with tapping for physical stuff that I would not believe if it hadn't happened to me. One of the very first ones was a client that I tapped with he was in his mid-60s and he had a frozen shoulder. So one of his shoulders wouldn't go. He couldn't raise his arm higher than I'm holding my arm at shoulder length for anybody just listening. And the other arm could go straight up in the air. So it was like this. And now this is an extreme example that it only took 45 minutes of tapping. This is not what normally happens. It normally takes longer, but this just happened to be really fast because it had been that way since a dirt bike accident in WA, where he was with his friend when he was 30 years old, and he came off the bike. He hit a root, came off the bike, broke his collarbone. They were 3 hours away from a hospital. And so what we do when we tap is that event was still very much alive in his unconscious. That little generator that was that event was telling his body that he was still in the experience. So we tapped on with tapping, you break it down and you tap on all the aspects. We tapped on that moment he saw that tree root and he knew he was going to hit it. We tapped on the feeling of falling through the air over the handlebars. We tapped on the sound of the collarbone breaking. We tapped on the fear that he felt for 3 hours holding on to with his broken collarbone and broken arm or something like that, holding on to his friend riding on the back of his dirt bike for 3 hours to try to get all these aspects. And we got the arm to where if I'm holding my arm out, if you look at a clock face and I'm holding it out sort of at 3 o'clock, we got it to the point where he could lift it up like here, 2 o'clock. He was thrilled. He had been to the best specialists. He'd had surgery. He'd had doctors telling him it's mechanical, it's physical. You've got cartilage, blah, 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 all the medical words about why it was frozen. It would never not be frozen. And he was thrilled that he got this much range of motion. And then I said, and this is my intuition, because he had talked about, he was very, very fit. He kayaked every single day and he only drank green tea with brown rice in it and things like that. And he also mentioned that his partner had to always sleep on the other side because if she slept on that arm, the pain was excruciating. And my intuition told me that he would be maybe angry that other 65-year-olds who don't take care of their bodies can put their arms way over their heads and he's stuck with his frozen shoulder. So I asked the questions in a way that kind of not putting words into his mouth. And he goes, that makes me really angry that I'm stuck with this after the way I've taken really good care of my body my whole life. I was like, okay, so let's tap on that. So we tapped while he focused on how annoyed he was that he takes such good care of his body and this and that. And then when we were done with that round of tapping, his arm goes all the way to the ceiling. So all that mechanical stuff that he had very good surgeons. He was a wealthy man and he'd had very good surgeons giving him their absolute best advice that you are stuck with that. And 45 minutes of tapping so that his body no longer believed that he was flying through the air, landing on the ground, broken collarbone. If you think about it, if your body believes, again, the unconscious believes, exists on that level of no linear time, there's no past, future. If that thread is there, if that experience is there, you're in it. You can understand why if the body still thought that you had a broken collarbone, your arm wouldn't go any higher than this.
Yeah.
So when we processed that event, cleared it, now he could lift up his arm. Beyond that, I will also say, and that might be true for you too, with this experience, because this is what I like to ask people. How vividly do you remember what you just described to me as you tell the story? Is it pretty experiential?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
That tells me that event is still living rent-free in your unconscious.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that happened 8 years ago that I wouldn't even remember if you were there and you said that. And I'm like, but yeah, I can bring it. Because the other day when I was thinking about this, I'm thinking, I'm going to ask Naomi about this. And then I went through it and I'm like, oh, I can remember it all. Yeah,
that's kind of the way that I test it because, and you're exactly right. There are a lot of things that happen to you that you cognitively, you can put the pieces together. They're facts, but they don't feel experiential. This event, you can bring up, you could probably remember what it sounded like when he was yelling at you in the thing. And you could probably bring to mind with pretty clear sort of audio fidelity what it sounded like when he said, you have to really think about whether you're right for this sport, whatever those words. You could probably play the soundtrack of that pretty easily. The visual of what your toe looked like. So if you've got anywhere in your nervous system, in your body, in your unconscious, however you want to say it, that there is still the belief that you are still experiencing that injury, the body will obey what the brain tells it. That's why the placebo effect works.
It was a great excuse to not go back to him, like, because my toe was still sore for weeks, and I couldn't get my boot back on. So it was just like, and he did say to me, like if you can have, because it was supposed to be 9 days in a row, and that was the end of the third day. He said you can have about like a 2-week gap and still pick up where we left off. But if it's longer than that, you'll have to go back to the start again. And so I was like, I was happy to have an injury and then because my wife was pretty happy that I stopped learning it too. She didn't really want me to do it at all. But I just, it was something I wanted to do, but yeah.
There's another aspect here, which I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but it's called secondary gain. And secondary gain is when there is an unconscious upside to holding on to a problem. We find this a lot with physical stuff, and you basically just said it. Your toe, that toenail, can be saving your life by coming off all the time, because the fact that you didn't have to go back because the injury was so bad, it kept you outside of that 2-week thing. Now, secondary gain never makes sense consciously. You never consciously decided that this worked in your favor to have your toe be so bad that you couldn't go back. But it's certainly in your unconscious. It's like your unconscious goes, oh, I'll keep you safe. Don't worry. Here's how I'm going to do it. And consciously, I don't have to ever go back and do that. I can just decide not to or decide to do it. It's in my conscious choice. But your body doesn't really work that way. Your body's like, hold my beer. I'll take care of this for you. Yeah. Don't worry. We're not going to have to do that again. I'm gonna shed this toenail repeatedly and keep this injury alive. And you were like, no, I don't want that. But you don't realize your body's doing that. So EFT helps with that. And the way you tap, what it often looks like is as you're tapping, you're saying, I don't want to go back and do that again. I'm really glad that my toenail is this way. I don't ever want my toenail to be fixed because this really keeps me safe. And your body's going, yeah, that's exactly right. You finally understand. And then what happens is when you've said that enough and expressed it enough, it stops being true. You're ready to release it. And your toenail could potentially get better.
Interesting.
Because the body is incredible at healing. So what gets in the way of that healing? I mean, things like inflammation, et cetera, things like poor nutrition, poor sleep, high stress, everybody knows those kinds of things. But it's also the unconscious stuff that's living, the little generators that are in our unconscious.
The generator that's running, that's got my electromagnet energized, and it's attached to that left big toe, constantly doing that to keep me safe, keep me alive, or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Let me just have a look at my questions here. And we talked about the negative statements. So now on YouTube, you can watch people teach you how to tap, but then you run people through. So when should someone go to YouTube? When should someone go to a practitioner?
That's a great question, because anybody going into YouTube and looking at videos, you're going to see maybe things that don't match what I've been saying. So it's helpful to understand that there's a difference between kind of internet tapping and working one-on-one with somebody. So take the example of that client with the wine. Internet tapping, what you would see is tapping, somebody would do maybe a video, or they'd be on a podcast and they'd be leading through tapping for like, let's release our craving for wine. And so they would be pulling a bunch of really general kinds of statements that, people might say, it helps me unwind. It's a treat. I deserve it. It helps me end the work week. All those kinds of general statements. Well, that wouldn't necessarily address the problem from this particular client, because her problem was this childhood trauma that she had. So the kind of tapping that you see on the internet, often it gets really positive really quickly, doesn't really focus on the negative as much. It kind of does a bit, like half, and then it pivots into talking about the positive and affirmations and all that stuff. And that can make you feel better in the moment. That can definitely do some self-regulating. It has its place. It brings a lot of people to EFT because they have that initial result with it and go, oh, I really noticed the difference. And then when that difference wears off, they're like, I need to go find a practitioner. The reason it wears off is because you're not being specific. You're not going into your generators. You're not shutting off your generators. You're just using tapping to calm the noise of all the generators. So it's good at that. It does have that sort of palliative application. But one-on-one tapping with a practitioner is where I find out what your generators are. What for you are the things that happen to you that are still actively chugging away in the unconscious. And this is especially true with trauma. You can do a lot of tapping on yourself. So there's the internet tapping. In fact, I'll make 3 categories. Okay. So there's internet tapping that I've described. There's tapping one-on-one with a practitioner, and then there's self-tapping. And I cleared my depression, 2 years of depression with EFT. That's what brought me to EFT. And it took me like 7 days. And that was all me just reading a manual on how to do it, because nothing that I was working on was major trauma. It was those generators, like specific things that had happened, which were sort of big teaching points in my life, but they weren't major trauma. So it was safe for me to work on those myself. But I was being specific. I was being my own client. I was focusing on the negative because that was the truth and the emotions that were coming up in my specific experiences. That's why it was so effective. And I got rid of my depression so quickly. You work with a practitioner if you're working on major trauma. The same way, if you go to the gym and you want to lift a really heavy weight over your head, you better have someone spotting you. Because what if you drop it, you want someone catching it. So
a personal trainer to build you up to that weight. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's actually another good way of looking at it too, just from a personal trainer. You first join a gym. It's a good idea to have a personal trainer show you the equipment and kind of, what are your goals? Okay, you'll want to do this, that, this. You can skip that machine. Oh, this one over here is really good, but do it in this way. So then you can go to the gym now by yourself. The trainer has shown you what machines to use and showed you how to do it. So I'm going to lift that really heavy weight. Okay, I'm going to book the trainer, the personal trainer to come over and stand over me and make sure I don't drop, those weights on my chest when I'm trying to lift them. So that's really kind of a good analogy also, because it's not a magic wand that someone waves over you. It's something you do yourself. It's a self-help technique. Even if you're working with me, if I'm working with you doing a one-on-one session, you're still tapping on yourself. I'm not tapping on you. I'm not reaching through the screen. If we were in person, you'd still be tapping on yourself. I'd be tapping on me. You'd be tapping on you. We're looking at each other. I'm guiding you on where to tap. I'm helping to turn the things you've said into the focus, into the tapping targets. And, but you're doing the healing yourself. So it's 3 different ways that you can get benefit, 3 different purposes of tapping.
So with you doing the self on yourself, and I've heard your story before of what put you into that depression, and it was at a particular event that had happened in recent history. So you were very aware that prior to that day, you weren't depressed, but so you knew what it was. Whereas if somebody's got anxiety, or they can't sleep, or they can't lose weight, or whatever, they can't get out of bed because they're not motivated and they don't know why. That's probably more where there's trauma that's unconscious, and that's where they would need practitioner to guide them for a while to uncover these things.
They likely do need a practitioner, but they also quite likely could find that on themselves, because when we're tapping, the unconscious comes to the party like it never has before. So we're not having to figure out. In fact, there's kind of an alignment with intuition. There's a parallel here, because intuition doesn't always obey what cognitive reason or logic is telling us, right? It can be the complete opposite. So in the same way, the unconscious knows what the origins of everything. If you have a belief of I'm not good enough, the unconscious knows exactly what happened, where all those generators are, what happened in all those specific experiences you had. And we're so used to kind of using our kind of conscious minds to figure stuff out. And especially when I work with our trained psychologists, they're trained very well to cognitively ask the questions to kind of and be able to diagnose and get at, well, the most likely thing is you're presenting with this kind of anxiety, so it's likely that you had this experience growing up and so on. But what tapping does is that tapping, actually, I think of it as knocking on the door of the unconscious. I also call it Morse code for the unconscious, because the unconscious knows all the answers and no one ever asks it. And when we tap, this literally wakes up the unconscious and goes, hey, Can we talk to you? Can we find out? Can you tell us the real deal? Because we can guess and we'll probably be wrong. So if you'd like to come to this process, show up to this party and give us some information. So you're tapping on the tapping points. You're thinking about what's presenting in your current life. So anxiety, let's say, you just focus on how you feel in your body. My heart's racing right now. My mouth is feeling dry. I'm having the thought of, oh my God, if I'm anxious when I give that presentation at work tomorrow, I'm going to screw it up. Everything that's coming to your mind is tappable. You just tap, tap, tap. Suddenly you have a memory. Your unconscious has gone, oh, this is like that time. You know, it doesn't matter how far back it goes. Your unconscious goes there again. There's no linear time in the unconscious. It's all happening right now if it wasn't resolved. So the unconscious goes, oh yeah, like that time when I was 1 year old. And you're like, what? I haven't never remembered something from when I was one before. And there it is. It's this maybe hazy, but it's this memory that just feels really important of standing in my crib crying and nobody's coming through the door, you know? And then, okay, I'll tap on that. So what a practitioner is doing is, one of the things a practitioner is really good at doing is helping to clear the space so that you listen to your unconscious rather than just kind of giving all the credit to your conscious cognitive thinking process, because that's educated guesses at best. If you want to go to the source, it's like your unconscious knows where all the bodies are buried.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like when you start tapping, it's potentially your intuition will come online a little and bring a random thought, like very softly. And you think, never thought that before. I haven't thought that for 30 years. And it potentially, and it's not like you have to understand that that's the issue, but it's bringing that, because in my earlier analogy, the magnet stuck that bit on, and now the little, the light's on that bit. And it's like we're seeing that because the magnet dragged that bit in, because we were starting to ask for help with tapping. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. And then we turn that we put the speed of the generator down as we keep tapping. And then when it's down idling, we turn it off if we continue to tap. And
exactly.
Yeah. And that memory's not gone, but it's not, the magnet's no longer connected because we turned it off. We drained the fuel. That generator can't get started again. Yeah.
That's right. It becomes a fact. It's something that happened in your life. You know, it happened in the past. And if it was a terrible thing, you don't not know it's terrible. You're still going, oh yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. That was terrible. But there's no part of you that feels like it's still happening.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways you know that that's the case is that you can think about the most terrible thing and there's no triggering, there's no activation. There's just a conscious awareness that it was awful. And boy, am I glad that's over. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It's kind of like you saw a movie.
Yeah.
Rather than that you're still reliving it. So anything that feels very vivid or very triggering, that feels like you get dropped back into it, your body doesn't know that isn't still happening, and tapping can help basically send. So when I said you tap and it sends the signal to your body of I'm safe, it's okay, it's also sending the signal of it's not happening anymore. It's not happening anymore. It's not happening anymore.
Very interesting. So I think you've given us some good reasons to try tapping, learn it, and use it. So is it something that people, once they've got over their initial 2 or 3 things that have been bothering them, in their life, is it something that people would then continue to do from time to time?
Yeah, think of it as like emotional hygiene. So it's like you go to the dentist and you have some fillings done and you have some rotten tooth pulled, and then you get given a toothbrush and a toothpaste and told to brush your teeth every day. So it's kind of like tapping can kind of work retroactively on a backlog that kind of, we shut off enough generators. Oh, life is so much better now. I'm not feeling anxious. I don't have this like limiting self-belief, et cetera, whatever, this addiction, these relationship problems, whatever it is. But life is hard. Life is full of our stress amygdala is getting fired off all the time. We're coming under pressure, trying to make decisions. trying to tune into your intuition. So tapping is something that you can use anytime you feel like, I really want to tune into my intuition. Calm your nervous system immediately, just in the moment. So you can have done a whole bunch of work to kind of shut off those past generators, but there could be a present situation going on. One of the things people find a lot is when it's a high pressure situation. The higher the stakes are, the harder it can be to tune into your intuition, because fear is one of the big blockers of your intuition, right? So EFT calms the fear. It basically calms down the place where fear comes from in your body and says, it's okay, nothing actually to be scared of. My physical body is not in jeopardy right now. And then when that's calmed down, you find that the intuition is coming, creativity comes, insights come, just sort of that knowing about, maybe a decision or a perception about something. It brings that whole system into focus online, because it calms down the fear that tends to obscure that kind of relationship with yourself and your intuition. So yeah, definitely using it as an ongoing tool whenever you need to regulate your nervous system. You'll just, quickly get on it, tap, take care of it, restore yourself, get yourself regulated on a on-call, bespoke, as
So
needed basis.
So if someone gets themselves to the stage where they're taking their toothbrush home and they're doing, they're tapping at home, is it for 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 20 minutes? Like, once we're in that place where we're in a good place and we're going to, how long?
You know what? As long as it feels good. One thing I will say is that people are always surprised how fast the time flies when they're tapping. You can tap. Okay, the shortest tapping is, I'm in my car, I'm driving, I go check all my mirrors, I'm going to go into the fast lane, and I go to do that, and this car's come out of nowhere and it shot past me in the lane beside me. And luckily, it happened so fast that I couldn't turn over, and my adrenaline spikes, and anyone's had this experience, your arms hurt. Like the adrenaline that spikes through your body and that cortisol spike, it's physically painful. I will just start tapping in the car. I'm holding the steering wheel and I'm tapping the points, and I'm just going, oh my God, that came out of nowhere. Oh my God, and I'm just tapping while I'm focusing on how my body's feeling. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm totally fine and calm. And now I'm going to sleep fine tonight. I'm not going to be weird for the next 3 days and not know why I'm weird, because my nervous system got kicked on, and I was able to shut it off because that car went past. Yes, it was a close call, but I'm still okay. I'm driving. I'm fine. And I'm a safer driver because I'm not super activated. Versus something that triggered me. I forget what it was. It was years ago. I think it was about 7-8 years ago or something like that. And I just was like kind of agitated. And I thought, you know what? It was a Saturday morning. I'm just going to go in and sit in my lounge room and I'm going to tap, because I can't do anything else. This is going around and around in my head, so I might as well tap. Think of tapping as opening a valve, pressure valve. And sometimes you have to hold it open longer. So I just sat down and I started tapping, and I just tapped, and I was talking out loud, and I went through different emotions and different thoughts, and I was trying to work something out. And then I had this big kind of sigh, big relief, and I just felt so much better. I felt lighter and I felt better. And if you had asked me in that moment, it was 10 o'clock in the morning when I went in and sat down. If you had asked me, how long do you think you've been tapping for? I would have said, probably about an hour, maybe a little over an hour. I get up, walk out of the lounge room. I look up at the clock. It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have literally tapped for 3 straight hours. I needed it. And time, I had no idea how much time was going by. That's not normal. I've never tapped since then or before for 3 straight hours on my own self. I something was going on and I needed it. And thank goodness I had that tool to use, because who knows what my next couple of months would have been like if I hadn't actually just opened the valve and done that, let the pressure out like that. But the answer to your question, therefore, is however long you need. You'd be surprised at how quickly the time goes. And really, ultimately, at its core, it's just stimulating these acupressure points while you express what's going on, how you're feeling. That's it.
Yeah. And you don't have to, and you're not coming up with positive statements about it. It's
No,
yeah.
that'll come naturally. That will, once everything is cleared and you have that big exhale, or sometimes people yawn when they tap, they sigh, they have different things like that, burp. But once you've done the releasing, quite often the positive is just there under the surface. It's those moments of insight, where you suddenly look at it from a different perspective. We call them cognitive shifts, where you're really upset about something and you're tap, tap, tap. And then suddenly you're not so upset and you kind of go, oh, that's never going to happen again. That was that one time. And, that person's moved away. So, oh, okay, it's not an issue anymore. You didn't have access to that positive perspective when you were super activated. So it's there under the surface waiting to emerge when you have cleared and dealt with and expressed all the stuff that was obscuring it.
Yeah. Okay. That's wonderful information. Thank you for that. And I've picked up quite a few things that I haven't heard you say before. So it was very, very helpful. Is there anything, before we go, I'm going to have your contact details in the show notes and that. So apart from that, is there anything else we haven't talked about that you would like to mention before we wind up?
Really just the number one question that people have about tapping is, will it work for XYZ? And I like to say the answer to that question is possibly that it's worked for lots of people with whatever that is. There's you can go on the internet, you can go to evidencebasedeft.com/research and look at all the things that have been researched about. Maybe your thing is in that list. There are lots of case studies that you can find online. But if no one's done a case study, no one's researched your particular thing, give it a try. I mean, you're not going to cause there's no negatives to tapping. You're not going to cause like a big problem by tapping. If you try to tap on something that's too intense, the negative is that you can get super activated and you need someone there that's got techniques that can put you all back into a safe place and contain it and you get you regulated. So definitely don't work on that stuff by yourself. Don't even try. You probably won't want to anyway, but you're not supposed to. So don't feel like you should be doing that stuff. But then everything else, just give it a try, even if you just generally feel a little agitated or upset or you're sad or anything, experiment. Just tap. Could be a physical thing too. Could be a headache. You stubbed your toe, anything. Just tap while you focus on what you're experiencing and just see how you go with it. So I would just say, give it a try.
Yeah. All right. And so if anyone's looking for a practitioner, on the links that we'll put in, there'll be details there for people to contact you or contact other practitioners, I'm sure. Is that right?
Yes. And I also, my workshops I run, I get half the people in my workshops are psychologists and the other half are just lay people from, I get plumbers, caterers, dads, veterinarians, like just all walks of life. And people come to the EFT training. I do foundational 3-day workshops online because they want to learn how to do this effectively for themselves. They want to work with their loved ones, or they want to include it in their existing therapy practice, or they want to become a practitioner. It doesn't matter. It's a really good general foundational training that is accessible to anyone. So you can find details about that on my website if anyone's interested.
Awesome. Great. We'll have all those details there. Thank you, Naomi. That's been very informative. And still talking about intuition, but with its own little track off where it heads. And it's great for everyone. And particularly, I'm sure there'll be people who haven't heard of this before or have heard bits, and you've clarified a lot for us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.